He noticed her before she spoke, not because she said anything. She hadn't yet. It was the way the hallway shifted around her. People straightened without thinking. Conversations ended halfway through sentences. Even the floor seemed quieter under her steps. Daniel kept his head down, rag in hand. Same slow motion across the glass panel. He'd already wiped twice. The toolbox sat by his cart. Old metal. Scratched. The logo caught the light. That was when she stopped. He felt it without looking. That pause. Then her voice came, controlled, almost casual. "Where did you get that?" He didn't answer right away. His hand stayed on the glass. And for a second, longer than it should have been, he couldn't remember if he was still breathing. He turned slowly. Not all the way at first. Just enough to see her shoes, clean, sharp edges, no dust. She stood still like she had time to wait for the answer. Daniel set the rag down on the cart. His fingers left a faint damp mark on the metal edge. He wiped them against his pants without thinking. "It's mine," he said. His voice came out lower than he expected, rough at the end. She looked past him, directly at the toolbox. Not a glance, a measure, like she was checking something against a memory she wasn't sure she trusted. "I can see that," she said. "That's not what I asked." He nodded once, small. He understood that tone. It didn't leave room for misunderstanding. The hallway felt longer now. Too open. A few people lingered at the far end, pretending to read something on their phones. No one moved closer. Daniel stepped slightly to the side. Not enough to block her view, but enough that the toolbox wasn't sitting alone between them. "I've had it a while," he said. Her eyes lifted to him then. Direct. No hesitation. There was something sharp in it, but not loud, not anger. Something quieter. "How long?" He hesitated. Not because he didn't know. The number was there, clear. But saying it out loud felt like stepping into something he had kept sealed. "Years," he said. That wasn't enough. He knew it before she spoke. "Where did you get it?" Same question. Slower now. Daniel exhaled through his nose. His shoulders shifted, just a little, like he was adjusting to a weight that hadn't been there a moment ago. "From here," he said. She didn't react right away. For a second, it almost looked like she was deciding whether she had heard him correctly. "From here," she repeated. He nodded. "That logo," she said, pointing, not touching, just indicating the engraving, "that wasn't on any equipment we issued back then. Not like that." Daniel followed her gaze. The logo wasn't large. It sat near the corner of the lid, etched deep enough that it had outlasted the paint around it. Clean lines, even now. "I know," he said. Something in his tone made her pause. Not agreement, not defiance either. Just certainty. Her posture shifted. Slight, but enough that the distance between them felt more intentional now. "Then explain it to me," she said. He looked down at the toolbox again. For a moment he didn't see the hallway anymore. Or her, just the metal. The scratches. The way the latch didn't close perfectly unless you pressed it twice. His thumb moved along the edge without thinking. "I didn't take it," he said. "I didn't say you did." He looked up then. Met her eyes fully for the first time. She held his gaze. Steady. "No," she added after a second. "But I am asking how you ended up with something that shouldn't exist outside this building." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Not sudden. It had been building since she first spoke. Now it settled in place. "I used to work here," he said. A small silence followed that. Not empty. Just measured. She took a step closer. Not aggressive. Just closing the gap enough that it was harder to pretend this was a casual conversation. "In what capacity?" she asked. "Technical," he said. "Maintenance. Systems, mostly." She watched him closely as he spoke. Not just listening. Weighing. "I don't see your name in any current records," she said. "I'm not in them," he replied. Clearly. That edge again. Controlled. Daniel shifted his weight. His foot caught slightly on the wheel of the cart. He steadied it without looking down. "I was here early on," he said. "Before all this." He gestured slightly around them. The glass walls, the polished floors, the quiet hum of systems that never seemed to stop. Her eyes followed the motion, then came back to him. How early? He hesitated again. It wasn't the question. It was what came with it. Before the second funding round, he said. Something flickered across her face, quick, gone just as fast. She crossed her arms, but it didn't look defensive. More like she was holding something in place. My father handled that stage, she said. Daniel nodded. I know. The words settled between them differently this time. Not just information. Recognition. She studied him longer now. Not the surface. Something underneath it. You expect me to believe, she said slowly, that you worked here during that period, and now you're... She glanced at his uniform. The cart. The rag still folded where he left it. Doing this. He didn't answer right away. There were a lot of ways he could have. None of them felt useful. Yes, he said. She didn't react with disbelief. That would have been easier to handle. Instead, she just watched him, as if waiting for the part that would make sense. And the toolbox? She asked. Daniel looked down again. The hallway seemed quieter now. Even the distant sounds had pulled back. He reached for the handle, lifted it slightly, then set it back down. The metal made a soft, dull sound against the tile. It was given to me, he said. By who? He swallowed once. Your father. That time the silence didn't pass quickly. It stayed. Not heavy, not loud. Just there, stretching. Victoria's expression didn't break, but something behind it shifted. Not enough to show, but enough that the air between them felt different. My father, she repeated. Daniel nodded. Yes. She looked at the toolbox again. Longer now, then back at him. When? She asked. He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Not because he didn't want to speak. Because the memory didn't come in clean. It never did. Not in order. Not in a way that was easy to explain. He could feel it, though. The edges of it. The weight. During a problem, he said finally. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That's not very specific. I know. Another pause. She stepped closer again. Close enough now that he could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. Not from age. From focus. What kind of problem? She asked. Daniel's hand rested on the toolbox again. His fingers pressed lightly against the engraving. He could still feel it even now. The depth of it, the way it had been cut, not stamped. It was late, he said, not answering her question. Not yet. But moving toward it. And for the first time since she stopped him, there was something in his voice that wasn't just guarded. It was quieter. Heavier. I wasn't supposed to be here that night, he added. Victoria didn't interrupt. She didn't push. She just stood there, waiting, and Daniel realized, standing in that bright hallway with the rag still damp in his hand, that there wasn't a way to explain the toolbox without opening everything that came with it. He hadn't planned for that. He hadn't needed to. Until now, he let out a breath. Slow, not steady. It caught halfway through, like something resisted coming up with it. I had already packed my things, he said. Victoria didn't move, but her attention narrowed. Not just listening now, holding on to each word as it came. Daniel glanced down the hallway again. The people at the far end were gone. At some point, the space had emptied without him noticing. I wasn't on the schedule, he continued. Not that week. His hand stayed on the toolbox. He didn't realize how tightly he was holding the edge until his fingers started to ache. He loosened them slightly. They were cutting hours, he said. Back then, Victoria nodded once. Small. She knew that part, or had heard it enough times to recognize the outline. But you came in anyway, she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel gave a faint shrug. I had a key, he said. Still worked. That almost sounded like something else. Not defiance. Not pride either. Just fact. The kind that doesn't ask for approval. Victoria shifted her weight, one foot slightly forward now. Her posture had changed again, though it wasn't obvious. Less distance, less formal. And you just decided to come back, she said. I wasn't planning to stay, he replied. He paused. His eyes moved across the glass panels again, but this time they didn't seem to see them. I needed to pick something up, he added. What? He hesitated. Does it matter? He said, not sharply, just tired. It might, she replied. He nodded slowly. Fair. My tools, he said. Some of them weren't here anymore. He tapped lightly on the lid of the toolbox. This one was, he added. Victoria followed the motion again. The engraving caught the light for a moment. And the rest? She asked. Gone, he said. No explanation. None offered. She didn't press on that part. Not yet. So you came in after hours, she said. With no authorization, using an old key. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He heard it the way she said it. Laid out clean. No emotion attached. Just structure. Yes, he said. And that's when this problem happened. He nodded. There was a shift in him then. Subtle, but real. His shoulders lowered slightly, like he had stopped trying to hold something back. It had already started, he said. Victoria's eyes sharpened. Started how? Daniel took a breath. This one deeper. The system wasn't stable, he said. It hadn't been for a few days. You were monitoring it. No, he said. Not officially. Another pause. I knew someone who was, he added. Victoria didn't interrupt, but something in her expression changed again. Less guarded now. More attentive. And they told you? She asked. Daniel shook his head. I saw it, he said. How? He gave a small, almost absent look toward the ceiling, as if the answer was somewhere up there, written in something only he remembered how to read. I used to check logs, he said, even when I wasn't asked to. That's not standard procedure. I know. No apology in it. Just acknowledgement. Victoria exhaled quietly. Not frustration. Something else. So you noticed instability, she said. And you came back in. Daniel nodded. I thought it was something small, he said. A loop, maybe. Or a bad patch. His thumb moved again across the edge of the toolbox. It wasn't. The words came softer. Victoria tilted her head slightly. What was it? Daniel didn't answer right away. Not because he didn't want to, because the answer didn't fit into one sentence. It was building, he said finally. She waited. The system kept trying to correct itself, he continued, but the correction was wrong, each time. He gestured lightly with one hand, like he was tracing something invisible. It's stacked, he said. Layer on layer. Quiet at first. And no one caught it? She asked. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. They were trying, he said, but they were looking in the wrong place. Victoria crossed her arms again, slower this time. And you weren't, she said. Daniel didn't answer that. He looked at the toolbox instead. I wasn't supposed to be there, he repeated. It sounded different now, not just a statement. A boundary he had crossed and was still standing on the other side of. What time was this? She asked. Late, he said again. After midnight. And you just walked in? Yes. You didn't call anyone? No. Why? That question stayed between them longer than the others. Daniel's eyes lifted, but not to her. Somewhere just past her shoulder. I didn't think there was time, he said. Victoria watched him carefully. For what? She asked. He hesitated. Then, for it to fail quietly, he said. The words sat differently. Not technical. Not vague either. Something more grounded. What happens if it fails loudly? She asked. Daniel met her eyes again. Everything in his expression had narrowed now. Not defensive, not guarded, just focused. It takes everything with it, he said. No exaggeration. No emphasis. Just truth, the way he remembered it. Victoria didn't look away. And you were sure of that? She asked. He nodded once. I'd seen it before, he said. Another piece. Small. but it shifted the shape of things. Not here, he added. That seemed to register. She uncrossed her arms slowly. And you thought you could fix it, she said. Daniel looked down again. I thought I could try, he replied. That's not the same thing. I know. Silence again. But this one felt different. Less like a pause, more like something settling. Victoria stepped back half a step, not retreating, just giving space. And this is when my father got involved, she said. Daniel's hand tightened on the toolbox again. Not as hard as before, but enough. Not at first, he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then when? He didn't answer right away. His gaze stayed on the engraving. For a moment, it looked like he might not answer at all. Then he spoke. After it stopped, he said. Victoria blinked once. Stopped? Daniel nodded. The system, he clarified. And you stopped it, she said. He didn't respond. Not directly. Instead, he reached down and opened the toolbox. The latch clicked on the second try. Same as always. Inside, everything was arranged neatly. Not new, not polished, but maintained. Tools that had been used, repaired, kept longer than most people would have bothered. Victoria looked inside, but her attention wasn't on the tools. It was on him. What did you use? She asked. Daniel's hand hovered over the contents for a moment. Then he picked up a small, worn screwdriver. The handle was faded. The metal slightly dulled from years of use. This, he said. She looked at it, then back at him. That's it? She asked. He gave a small shake of his head. No, he said. A pause. It's what I had. That landed differently. Victoria's expression shifted again. Not softer, not yet. But something in the way she was looking at him had changed. Less like she was trying to catch him in something. More like she was trying to understand how all of this fit together. And after it was over, she said slowly, My father gave you the toolbox. Daniel placed the screwdriver back carefully. Closed the lid halfway, but not all the way. He didn't give me the toolbox, he said. Victoria frowned slightly. You just said. He gave it back, Daniel said. That stopped her. The words were simple, but they carried something else, something that hadn't been there before. She looked at the engraving again, longer this time. Then back at him. What does that mean? She asked. Daniel's hand rested on the lid. He pressed it down gently until the latch clicked. The sound echoed more than it should have in the quiet hallway. It means, he said, it wasn't mine to begin with. He lifted his eyes, met hers again, and it wasn't supposed to leave that room. The air between them shifted again, not sharply. Just enough that something unspoken had moved closer to the surface. Victoria didn't speak right away. For the first time since she had stopped him, she looked uncertain. Not about him, about what she was hearing. And Daniel, standing there with the rag forgotten on the cart and the past sitting open between them, realized there was no clean way to go back from this point. Not anymore. Victoria didn't speak for a while. Not even a small question to keep things moving. She just stood there, looking at the toolbox like it had said something on its own. Daniel didn't rush her. He couldn't have, even if he tried. The words had slowed in him too. They didn't come when pushed. A door opened somewhere behind them. Soft. Someone stepped out, paused when they saw her, then turned back without a sound. The hallway settled again. You said it wasn't supposed to leave that room, she said finally. Her voice was quieter now, not softer, just less certain of its edges. Daniel nodded. Yes. What room? He looked down at the floor for a second. The reflection of the overhead lights stretched across the tile in long, straight lines. The server room, he said. She frowned slightly. There were multiple. I know. Then which one? He hesitated. Not because he didn't know. Because saying it would place things more precisely than he had so far. The old one, he said. That doesn't narrow it down. He glanced at her. then away again. Lower level, he added. Before they expanded, something in her expression shifted again. A small recognition, but not complete. That section was decommissioned, she said, years ago. Daniel nodded. I remember. Another silence. This one shorter. But at the time, she continued, it was still active. Yes. And you had access. Daniel didn't answer that immediately. His hand rested flat against the toolbox now. Not gripping. Just there. I knew how to get in, he said. Her eyes sharpened slightly at that. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed. It isn't. She studied him again, longer than before. You keep choosing your words carefully, she said. Daniel let out a small breath. Almost a quiet laugh, but not quite. I'm trying not to say something wrong, he replied. Wrong how? He looked at her then. Direct. Something that sounds different than it was, he said. That held. Victoria didn't respond right away. She shifted her weight again, slower this time, like she wasn't in a hurry to move forward. Let's go back, she said. Daniel's shoulders tightened slightly. Back to what? He asked. To when you walked in, she said. After midnight. No one expecting you. He nodded once. You said the system was already unstable. Yes, and you went straight to the server room. No, that caught her. No, Sage repeated. Daniel shook his head. I checked the main floor first, he said. Why? To make sure it wasn't something obvious, he replied. She watched him closely. And was it? No. A short pause. What did you see? She asked. Daniel's eyes moved again, but not around the hallway this time. Inward, like he was replaying something that didn't line up clean. Lights were on where they shouldn't have been, he said. Meaning, sections that usually go dark after hours, he explained. They were still active. That could be normal, she said. It could, he agreed. But it wasn't. No. She waited. There were resets happening, he added. Scheduled? No. How do you know? Daniel didn't answer immediately. His fingers tapped once against the toolbox. A small, unconscious motion. Because they didn't line up, he said. With what? With anything, he replied. That landed. Victoria's arms uncrossed slowly. Random reset, she said, across the system. Daniel nodded, and no one flagged it. They might have, he said, but not in time. Her jaw shifted slightly. Not frustration, more like something didn't sit right. So you saw this, she said, and decided to go downstairs. Yes. Still without contacting anyone. Daniel didn't respond. She watched him. That part matters, she added. I know. Then why didn't you? He exhaled slowly. It took longer this time. Because if I was wrong, he said, I didn't want to be the reason someone got pulled in for nothing. And if you weren't wrong? He met her eyes again. Then there wouldn't be time to explain it over a call, he said. The hallway felt smaller now, not physically, just contained. Victoria took a step to the side, leaning slightly against the glass panel. Not resting, just shifting her position enough to break the straight line between them. And when you got downstairs, she asked. Daniel's gaze dropped again. The door was open, he said. That changed something. Victoria straightened slightly. Open? She repeated. Yes, that doesn't happen. I know. Who else was there? No one. You're sure? He nodded. I checked. How? Daniel hesitated. Then I called out, he said. And? No answer. That doesn't mean. I know what an empty room sounds like, he said quietly. That stopped her. Not the words. The way he said them. She didn't push that point further. Go on, she said. Daniel's hand moved across the toolbox again, slower now. The system was already trying to correct itself, he said. You mentioned that. It was faster now, he added, more aggressive. In what way? He looked at her. Like he was panicking, he said. Victoria frowned slightly. Systems don't panic. No, he agreed, but they can behave like something's wrong. That's vague. I know. He paused. Then, it was overriding its own safeguards, he said. That landed harder. Victoria's expression tightened. That shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't, he echoed. Silence again. But this time, it didn't sit still. It moved. You could feel it in the space between them, and you understood what was happening, she said. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. I understood enough, he said. To do what? He hesitated. Then to know it wouldn't stop on its own. Her eyes held his. And you decided to intervene. Yes. With what? She asked. Daniel glanced at the toolbox, then back at her. With what I had, he said. That doesn't answer the question. He nodded. I know. Another pause. Victoria pushed off the glass slightly. Took a step closer again, but slower this time. You're describing a critical failure, she said. One that should have triggered alerts across multiple teams. It did, Daniel said. She stopped. It did. He nodded. They just didn't reach the right place, he added. What does that mean? Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. It means the system was already misrouting them, he said. That shifted everything. Victoria didn't speak, didn't move. She just looked at him. And for the first time, the possibility that he wasn't exaggerating or confused or mistaken settled in fully. And you were alone, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. Yes. A long pause followed. Not empty, just heavy. And you still went in, she said. He didn't answer, because that part didn't need repeating. It was already there. In the way he stood, in the way his hand never really left the toolbox, in the space between what he said and what he didn't. Victoria looked at him differently now. Not as a janitor, not even as someone who might be lying, but as someone who had been somewhere she hadn't. And that made the next question come slower, more careful. What happened when you tried to stop it? He didn't answer right away. The question stayed there, open, like something waiting to be picked up carefully. Daniel looked at the floor again, not to avoid her, just to find where to begin. It didn't let me, he said. Victoria's brow tightened. What do you mean? The system, he clarified. It kept rejecting the changes. What changes? The ones that would have slowed it down, he said. She watched him closely. You tried to isolate it, she said. Yes. And it failed. It didn't fail, Daniel said quietly. She paused. It refused. That shifted something. Victoria straightened slightly. Systems don't refuse, she said. Daniel nodded. I know. But this one, it wasn't thinking, he said. It was reacting. To what? He hesitated, then shook his head once. I didn't know at the time. That seemed to frustrate her, just a little. But you still acted, she said. Yes, without understanding the cause. I understood the outcome, he replied. She held his gaze. And that was enough? It had to be. The words settled heavier than the others. Victoria exhaled slowly, not sharply, just letting something move through her. And what did you do next? She asked. Daniel's hand moved across the toolbox again. He pressed his palm flat against the lid this time, like he needed the contact. I tried to cut it off, he said. From where? The core node, he answered. Her expression changed immediately. That's not a manual process. I know. You'd need authorization, he finished. She stopped. Yes, she said. You would. Daniel nodded. I didn't have it. Then how? I didn't go through the system, he said. That landed hard. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You bypassed it. Daniel didn't respond directly, but he didn't deny it either. That's not just a risk, she said. I know what it is, he said. His voice didn't rise, but it held something now. Not sharp, just firm. She paused, studied him. You're saying you physically accessed the node, she said. Yes. With that? She gestured toward the toolbox. Daniel followed her hand, then nodded. Yes. A silence stretched between them. Not disbelief. Something closer to it, but quieter. That's not standard equipment, she said. No, it's not even designed for that level of access. I know. Then how did it work? Daniel didn't answer immediately. His fingers moved along the edge of the lid again, tracing the same line without realizing it. Because the system wasn't protecting itself the way it should have, he said. Victoria frowned. Explain. It was focused somewhere else, he replied. On what? He hesitated. Then, on correcting the error, he said. And that gave you an opening. Daniel nodded. For a moment, he added. She absorbed that. Then, and you took it. Yes. Another pause. This one shorter, but sharper. What did you do? She asked. Daniel's jaw shifted slightly. I forced a break, he said. In what sense? I disconnected the loop, he replied. How? He looked at her. Then down at the toolbox. It wasn't clean, he said. That's not what I asked. I know. He paused. Then I had to interrupt the sequence manually, he said. That could have crashed everything. It almost did. The words came out flat, not dramatic, just remembered. Victoria's expression tightened. But it didn't, she said. Daniel shook his head. No. Why not? He didn't answer right away, because that part wasn't something he had ever fully explained, even to himself. It stabilized, he said finally. That's not an explanation. I know. She stepped closer again. Not abruptly, just enough that the space between them felt more direct. Something prevented the crash, she said. What was it? Daniel met her eyes, held them, then looked away. I don't know, he said. That didn't sit well. You don't know, she repeated. No. You expect me to accept that. Daniel didn't respond, because he didn't expect anything. He just knew what had happened, or what it had felt like. There was a point, he said slowly, where it could have gone either way. Victoria stayed still. And then it didn't, she said. No. Something changed. Yes. What? Daniel's hand pressed harder against the toolbox. The metal gave a faint sound under the pressure. I made the break, he said. And it held, he replied. That's not how systems work. I know. Another silence. This one longer. Not because there was nothing to say, because neither of them had something that fit. Victoria's gaze shifted briefly to the glass beside them. Her reflection looked back, faint and distorted. Then she looked at him again. And after that, she said, my father arrived. Daniel nodded. Yes. How long after? Not long. How do you know? I heard him, Daniel said. Hear him? He was on the phone, he explained, before he came in. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. What was he saying? Daniel hesitated. Then, he was asking if it was contained, he said. And was it? Daniel looked at her. It wasn't spreading anymore, he replied. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed. She studied him again. And when he saw you, she said, what happened? Daniel's expression shifted slightly. Not much. Just enough that something behind it moved. He didn't ask me to leave, he said. That seemed to catch her off guard. He didn't? She asked. Daniel shook his head. No. What did he do? Another pause. Daniel's hand finally moved away from the toolbox. It dropped to his side slowly. He looked at the system first, he said. And then he looked at me. Victoria waited. Daniel's eyes stayed forward now. Not on her, not on anything specific, just steady. He asked what I did, he said. And you told him? Yes. What did he say? Daniel didn't answer immediately. The memory didn't come back as words first. It came back as a feeling, the room, the quiet, The way everything had stopped moving, even though nothing actually had. He didn't say much, Daniel said. That's not helpful. I know. He paused. Then, he just nodded, he added. Victoria frowned. That's it? Daniel shook his head slightly. No. What else? Another hesitation. Longer this time. He told me to stay where I was, Daniel said. And you did? Yes. Why? Daniel finally looked at her again. Because that answer was simple. Because he wasn't asking, he said. That landed. Victoria's expression shifted again. Not sharp, not soft, just different. And the toolbox? She asked after a moment. Daniel glanced down at it, then back at her. That came later, he said. How much later? He thought about it. Not in minutes, in what had changed between then and when the engraving happened. After everything settled, he said. That's vague. I know. She waited. He didn't rush it. He called me back in, Daniel said. You had already left? Yes, and you came back. He nodded. What for? Daniel's hand hovered over the toolbox again, then rested lightly on it. He said he had something for me, he said. Victoria's gaze dropped to the engraving, then back to him. And that was this. Daniel nodded. Yes. She studied him for a long moment. No interruption. No immediate judgment. Just looking. And then, quieter than before, why didn't you stay? She asked. The question didn't come from the same place as the others. It wasn't about the system or the night. It was about what came after. Daniel didn't answer right away, because that part wasn't tied to a single moment. It was a series of small ones. Decisions that didn't feel like decisions at the time. He looked down at his hands, then at the floor, then back at her. They didn't ask me to, he said. Victoria didn't react immediately. And that was enough? She asked. Daniel held her gaze. Yes, he said. The hallway felt different again. Not tense, not quiet, just shifted. And neither of them moved to fill the space that followed. He hadn't thought about that part in a long time, not clearly. It didn't come back like the rest of it, not sharp, not ordered, just pieces. The way a room feels after you've left it, not while you're still inside. Victoria didn't press him again. She waited. That made it harder, in a way. They didn't ask me to stay, he repeated, quieter this time. Her eyes stayed on him. That doesn't explain why you left, she said. Daniel nodded. I know. A pause. He looked down at the toolbox again, but this time it didn't feel like something solid, more like something that connected him to a version of himself he didn't fully recognize anymore. They had what they needed, he said. Victoria frowned slightly. After one night. It wasn't just the night, he replied. That shifted something. She didn't interrupt. They were already moving forward, he added. I just kept something from breaking before they got there. The words came out slower now. Not because he was choosing them carefully, because they didn't come all at once. And that wasn't enough to keep you, she said. Daniel shook his head. That's not how it works. How does it work? He didn't answer immediately, because the truth didn't sound clean. People get replaced, he said. Victoria's expression tightened slightly. Not like that. Daniel looked at her. Yes, he said, like that. There wasn't anger in it, just something settled. She held his gaze like she was deciding whether to challenge that or not. Then, you said he called you back, she said, after you left. Daniel nodded. Yes, and gave you the toolbox. He returned it, Daniel corrected gently. Victoria exhaled through her nose. Returned it, she repeated. Her eyes moved over the metal again, slower now. Not inspecting, not doubting, just taking it in. What was it doing in the server room in the first place, she asked. That question lingered longer than the others. Daniel didn't look at her when he answered. I left it there, he said. When? That night. She tilted her head slightly. Why would you leave your tools behind? He hesitated. Because the answer felt smaller than the question. I didn't think I'd need them again, he said. That sat in the space between them. Victoria didn't respond right away. She looked at the toolbox again, then back at him. But you came back for it, she said. Daniel shook his head. No. No? He called me back, Daniel said. I wasn't planning to return. That shifted something again. Then why did you answer? She asked. He paused. Because that answer didn't come from logic. He asked, Daniel said. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Victoria watched him closely. That's it? She asked. Daniel met her eyes. Yes. Another silence, this one heavier than the last. And when you came back, she said slowly, everything was what? Daniel thought about it. Not in words, in what he remembered seeing. Quieter, he said. In what way? The system was stable, he replied. They had people in there, real teams, not just one person trying to keep up. And your father? Daniel's expression shifted slightly again. Not much, just enough that it didn't pass unnoticed. He was different, Daniel said. How? He didn't answer right away, because that part wasn't something he had ever tried to explain. Focused, he said finally. That's not very specific. I know. She waited. He wasn't looking at me the way people usually do, Daniel added. Victoria's brow furrowed. What does that mean? Daniel took a breath. It came out slower than the others. Like I wasn't out of place, he said. That landed. Not loudly. But enough. Victoria didn't speak for a moment. Then, and that mattered, she said. Daniel nodded. Yes. A small pause followed. Then she asked, what did he say when he gave it back? Daniel's hand moved to the latch again. He didn't open it this time. Just rested his fingers there. He didn't explain it, Daniel said. Victoria frowned slightly. Then what did he say? Daniel looked at her. Held her gaze. Then, he said, you keep things running, Daniel said. The words sat differently than everything else. Not technical, not vague. Something else. Victoria didn't respond immediately. Her eyes stayed on him, searching for something behind what he said. And that was it? She asked. Daniel nodded. That was it. No long explanation, no formal recognition. Just that. Victoria looked down at the toolbox again. The engraving. Clean. Deliberate. And then you left, she said. Yes. You didn't ask for anything. No. You didn't stay in contact. No. She let out a small breath. Not frustration. Something else. And you came back here, she said, glancing at his uniform. Years later. Doing this. Daniel followed her gaze briefly, then looked back at her. Yes. Why? The question didn't come sharp, it came quiet. That made it harder to answer. Daniel shifted his weight slightly. The floor didn't feel as steady as it had earlier. Because it was work, he said. That's not an answer. I know. She waited. He didn't rush it, because the real answer didn't sound complete, even in his own head. I didn't think it mattered, he said. What didn't? The rest of it, he replied. Victoria's eyes held his. It mattered enough for him to engrave the company's mark into your tools, she said. Daniel nodded once. Yes, and that didn't stay with you. He hesitated. Then it did, he said. Then why didn't you say anything? That question didn't come from suspicion. It came from somewhere else. Daniel looked at the toolbox again. His fingers traced the edge of the engraving. I wasn't supposed to, he said. Victoria's expression tightened. Who told you that? No one. Then why would you think that? Daniel looked up, met her eyes. Because nothing was written down, he said. That landed. Harder than expected. Victoria didn't respond, because she understood what that meant. No record. No documentation. Nothing that connected him to that moment in the way the company would recognize. So you just let it go, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. Yes. Another pause. Then, and the toolbox stayed with you, she added. Yes. Why keep it? Daniel's hand rested on it again. He didn't need to think about that one. It was mine, he said. Then, after a second, and it wasn't. Victoria watched him carefully. That contradiction didn't confuse her. It made sense in a way that wasn't easy to explain. And you never used it again, she said. Daniel shook his head. Not for that. For what, then? He glanced at the rag still sitting on the cart, then back at her. For what I do now, he said. That sat between them. Quiet, heavy in a different way. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, not as someone questioning him anymore, but as someone trying to place him somewhere that didn't fit the space he was standing in, and Daniel, standing there with ears folded into something that didn't show on paper, felt that same distance he had felt the night he left. Not pushed out, not pulled in, just unmarked, and still carrying it. Victoria didn't look away. Not from him, not from the space between them where everything he said seemed to stay longer than it should have. You said you didn't think it mattered, she said. Daniel nodded once. Yes. She shifted slightly, not stepping back this time. Just adjusting like she was settling into the conversation instead of standing outside it. But you kept the one thing that proved it did, she added. Daniel's fingers rested on the engraving again. He didn't trace it now, just felt it there. It wasn't proof, he said. What was it then? He thought about that. Not in words. In the way it had felt when he first held it again. Something I didn't throw away, he said. Victoria watched him closely. That's not the same as not mattering, she said. No, he agreed. It isn't. A quiet passed between them. Then she asked, What happened after you left that second time? Daniel's shoulders shifted slightly. That part came back slower, less clear. I didn't come back, he said. I can see that, she replied. I mean after. He nodded. I found other work, he said. What kind? Same as before, he answered. Fixing things, systems mostly. And you never reached out here again? No. Even when the company grew. Daniel glanced briefly down the hallway, everything around them now. The glass, the clean lines, the quiet hum, none of it matched what he remembered. No, he said. Why not? He hesitated. Then it wasn't mine, he said. Victoria's brow tightened slightly. You helped keep it from collapsing. For a night, he replied. That's not small. It is, Daniel said. The words didn't come defensive. They came settled, like something he had already decided a long time ago. Victoria didn't agree, but she didn't interrupt either. She let the silence sit. Then, and years later you came back, she said, but not as what you were. Daniel nodded. Yes. You didn't try to return to systems work here. No, even though you could have. He didn't respond right away, because that part wasn't something he had tested. I didn't think it worked that way, he said. How would you know if you didn't try? Daniel looked at her. His expression didn't change much. I didn't need to, he said. That answer stayed between them longer than expected. Not because it was unclear, because it carried something underneath it that didn't need explaining. Victoria exhaled slowly, not frustrated, just adjusting to what she was hearing. And this whole time, she said, glancing at the toolbox again, you carry that with you. Daniel nodded. Yes. And never once thought to mention it. He shook his head. No. Not even when you were hired here again. Daniel's jaw shifted slightly. They didn't ask, he said. That's not the point. I know. Another pause. Victoria's gaze dropped to the toolbox again, then to his hands. There were small marks along his fingers. Old ones. Faint, but visible. You still fix things, she said. Daniel followed her gaze briefly, then nodded. Yes, just not the same kind. No. She looked back up at him. "Do you miss it?" she asked. The question came softer, not part of the earlier line of questioning. Daniel didn't answer immediately, because that one didn't have a clean answer. "It's quieter now," he said. "That's not what I asked." "I know." He paused. "Then I don't have to carry it home," he added. That changed the shape of the question. Victoria's expression shifted slightly. Less sharp now. "Carry what?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. His eyes moved past her again. Not to anything in the hallway, just somewhere else. "The things that don't stop when you leave," he said. Victoria didn't speak, because she understood enough of that without needing more. Another silence followed, longer this time. Not uncomfortable, just full. Then she asked, "Why didn't you tell anyone what you did?" Daniel blinked once. The question came back around, but it didn't feel the same this time. "Because it wasn't something I did alone," he said. "You said you were the only one there." "I was," he agreed. "Then what does that mean?" He hesitated. Then, "It didn't feel like something I owned," he said. Victoria frowned slightly. "That doesn't make sense." Daniel nodded. "I know." He didn't try to explain it further, because the explanation would have sounded wrong, or incomplete, and he had already spent years leaving it that way. Victoria studied him again, not questioning, not doubting, just trying to understand the shape of something that didn't fit neatly. "And my father," she said after a moment, "he never mentioned you." Daniel nodded. "I didn't expect him to." "Why not?" He looked at her. Because that answer was simple. He had other things to carry, Daniel said, that sat in the space between them. Quiet, heavy in a way that didn't push outward. Victoria's eyes dropped briefly. Not fully. Just enough to break the direct line between them. Then she looked back up. He wasn't someone who ignored what mattered, she said. Daniel didn't argue. "I know," he said. "Then why would he leave you out of it?" Another pause. Daniel's hand moved off the toolbox completely now. It rested at his side. "Maybe he didn't," he said. Victoria's brow tightened. "What does that mean?" Daniel glanced at the engraving again, then back at her. "Maybe that was enough," he said. "That?" she asked, gesturing toward the toolbox. He nodded. "Yes." She looked at it again, longer this time. Then back at him. "And you accepted that?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." Another silence. But this one felt different. Less like a pause in questioning. More like something settling into place. Victoria straightened slightly, not distancing herself. Just recentering. "And now I'm standing here," she said quietly, "finding out about it from you. Not from any record, not from any report." Daniel didn't respond, because there wasn't anything to add to that. She took a small breath, then let it out slowly. "And you expected this to just stay where it was," she added. Daniel looked at her. "Yes," he said. The answer came without hesitation. Not defensive, not uncertain, just true. Victoria held his gaze, and for the first time since she had stopped him in the hallway, there wasn't a question in her expression. There was something else, something quieter, something that didn't need an immediate response. She glanced once more at the toolbox, then back at him, and the space between them, filled with something that had gone unspoken for years, didn't feel as distant as it had before. She didn't ask another question right away. For a moment, it seemed like she might be done, not with him, just with the part that could be answered directly. Daniel stood where he was. The rag had dried where he left it. The glass panel still held a faint streak he hadn't finished. He noticed it now. Not because it mattered, because it was something simple, something that stayed in place when everything else shifted. Victoria's gaze moved past him, down the hallway, then back again. "You said the system stabilized," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes. And no one ever followed up with you?" "No." "That doesn't make sense." Daniel didn't respond, because it hadn't made sense to him either. Not at first. She took a small step away, then stopped. Not leaving. Just creating a different angle between them. Something like that doesn't just disappear into nothing, she said. It didn't, Daniel replied. She looked at him again. Then where did it go? He hesitated. Then they moved forward, he said. That's not an answer. I know. She waited. They built over it, he added. Victoria's brow tightened slightly. Over what? Daniel glanced down at the floor again, then back at her. The part that almost failed, he said. She studied him. That's not how systems are handled, she said. No, he agreed. It isn't. Another pause. But it happens, he added. That sat between them, not as a claim, as something he had seen more than once. Victoria didn't argue. Not immediately. Instead, she looked around the space again. The polished surfaces, the quiet, steady rhythm of a place that didn't show its strain. And you just walked away from that, she said. Daniel nodded. Yes. Even knowing what almost happened. Yes. Her expression shifted slightly. Why? Daniel took a breath. This one came slower. Because the answer didn't sit cleanly. Because it didn't belong to me anymore, he said. Victoria held his gaze. It never did, she replied. Daniel didn't disagree, but he didn't move away from what he said either. I was there for a moment, he said. That's all. And that was enough for you? He nodded. Yes. Another silence followed. Then what if it hadn't held? She asked. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. That question didn't come from curiosity. It came from somewhere else. It almost didn't, he said. She didn't look away. What would have happened? She pressed. Daniel hesitated, not because he didn't know, because saying it made it real again. It would have spread, he said. To what extent? He paused. Then, everything connected to it, he said. That's vague. I know. Then explain it. Daniel looked at her. His expression didn't change much, but something in it sharpened. It would have taken the system down, he said. Not all at once, not clean. Victoria's posture stiffened slightly. How? It would have corrupted the processes trying to fix it, he said. Each correction would make it worse. That's a cascade failure. Yes. And no one else saw it. They saw parts of it, he said. Not the whole. She crossed her arms again, slower this time. And you did. Daniel didn't answer, because that part wasn't something he had ever said out loud. She let that sit. Then, and you stopped it with a manual brake, she said. Yes, that's not standard procedure. I know. It's not even recommended. I know. She exhaled slowly. Not frustration, just something that needed to move. And if you had been wrong, she said, you could have caused the failure yourself. Daniel nodded. Yes. And you still did it. Yes. That stayed there. Not dramatic. Just present. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, not questioning anymore, measuring something else. And you carried that, she said. Daniel didn't respond immediately, because that word carried felt closer than the others. Yes, he said. How? The question came softer. Daniel looked down at his hands, then back at her. You don't think about it all the time, he said. That's not what I asked. I know. He paused. Then, it shows up when something feels close to it, he added. Victoria watched him. Like what? She asked. Daniel glanced at the glass panel again. The unfinished streak. Then back at her. When something doesn't look right, he said. But no one else is noticing. That landed. She didn't respond right away. And what do you do then? She asked. Daniel's hand moved slightly. Not toward the toolbox this time. Just a small shift. You fix what you can, he said. And the rest? He hesitated. Then you let it be what it is, he said. Victoria's expression changed slightly. Not agreement, not disagreement, just recognition of something that didn't have a better answer. Another silence followed. Then she asked, "Did you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't gone back that night?" Daniel didn't answer right away, because that thought had come to him before. Not often, but enough. "Yes," he said. "And?" He looked at her, then away again. "It wouldn't have stopped," he said. That sat there, heavy, unmoved. Victoria didn't push further, because she understood what that meant, not in detail, but in weight. She uncrossed her arms slowly. "And no one knows that," she said. Daniel shook his head. "No. And you were fine with that?" He nodded. "Yes." Another pause. Then, "Why?" she asked. That question didn't come sharp. It came quiet. Daniel looked at her, held her gaze. "Because it already happened," he said. Victoria's brow tightened slightly. "That doesn't answer it. I know." He paused. "Then nothing changes if you say it out loud," he added. "That stayed between them, not fully accepted, not dismissed, just there." Victoria looked down briefly, then back at him. "And now I know," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes, and that changes something." He didn't respond, because he didn't know if it did, or how. She watched him, waiting, but Daniel didn't fill the space. He just stood there, the same way he had when she first stopped him. Only now, there was more in the space between them than there had been before, and neither of them stepped away from it. The hallway didn't feel the same anymore. Nothing had changed. Same lights, same quiet hum in the walls, same glass panels stretching in both directions. But something in it had shifted. Not outside, between them. Victoria looked past him again, then back, like she was checking whether the space still held what had just been said. "And you never wrote it down," she said. Daniel shook his head. "No. No report. No record. No." She nodded slowly, as if confirming something to herself more than to him. "That means it never happened," she said. Daniel didn't respond, because that wasn't entirely true. But it also wasn't wrong. "That's how this place works," she added. Her voice didn't carry frustration, just recognition. Daniel glanced at the toolbox, then back at her. "I know," he said. A pause followed. Then she stepped closer again. Not abrupt, just enough that the conversation felt more direct than before. "And you were okay with that," she said. Daniel took a breath. It didn't come out evenly. "I didn't think about it that way," he said. "How did you think about it?" He hesitated. "Then it was done," he said. "That's not the same as being okay with it." "I know." Another silence. Victoria studied him again, not trying to catch something this time, trying to understand what stayed with him and what didn't. "And this whole time," she said, "you've been here, working in the same building, carrying that, and saying nothing." Daniel nodded. "Yes, even when you saw the company grow. Yes, even when things changed. Yes." She let out a slow breath. Not heavy, just measured. "That doesn't sit right," she said. Daniel didn't argue, because he understood that. It hadn't sat right with him either, not in the beginning. But over time, it had settled. Not comfortably, just into place. "You said nothing changes if you say it out loud," she continued. Daniel looked at her. "Yes, and you still believe that?" He paused. Then, "I don't know," he said. That was the first time his answer shifted. Not fully, but enough. Victoria noticed. Her posture changed slightly, less fixed. "Something changed just now," she said. Daniel didn't respond immediately, because he felt it too. But he didn't have a name for it. "Yes," he said, quiet. She looked at the toolbox again, then at his hands, then back at his face. "And you didn't come here today expecting any of this," she said. "No. You were just doing your job." "Yes." Another pause. And I stopped you because of that, she added, nodding toward the engraving. Daniel followed her gaze, then nodded. Yes. There was something in the way she looked at it now. Not suspicion, not doubt. Something else. Something that had shifted slowly over the course of the conversation. You know what it looks like, she said. Daniel glanced at her, then back at the toolbox. Yes. Someone sees that, she continued, and doesn't know the story. It raises questions. I understand. And you didn't think about that. He shook his head. No. Why not? Daniel paused. Because that answer wasn't complicated. I stopped looking at it that way, he said. As what? Something that needed explaining, he replied, that stayed between them. Victoria didn't respond right away, because that made sense in a way she didn't expect. And now? She asked. Daniel looked at her, then down at the toolbox, then back again. I don't know, he said. That answer didn't carry uncertainty the way most people used it. It just meant he hadn't reached that part yet. Victoria nodded slowly. Not pushing, not pressing, just accepting where he was. Another silence followed. But this one felt different. Less like a pause, more like a space where something had already been decided, even if it hadn't been spoken. Then she said, You shouldn't be doing this. Daniel blinked once. Not because he didn't hear her, because the words didn't land where he expected. Doing what? He asked. She gestured lightly toward the cart. The rag. The quiet work he had been in the middle of before she stopped him. This, she said. Daniel looked at it, then back at her. It's work, he said. That's not the point. I know. A pause. Then, it's what I do now, he added. Victoria studied him. For how long, Daniel thought about it. Not in exact numbers, just time. A while, he said. That's not an answer. I know. He didn't try to make it more precise, because it didn't matter that way. She took a small step closer, not closing the distance entirely, just enough that her voice didn't have to carry. You stepped into something that night, she said. Daniel didn't respond. You made a decision that could have gone either way, she continued. He nodded once. Yes, and you handled it. A small pause. Then yes, she held his gaze. And then you walked away from it. Daniel nodded again. Yes. Another silence. But this one didn't feel unresolved. It felt like something building. Not pressure, something else. And you think that ends there, she said. Daniel looked at her. It did for me, he said. Victoria shook her head slightly. No, she said. It didn't. Daniel didn't argue. He just stood there. Because part of him knew she wasn't wrong. He just hadn't followed that line of thought all the way through. You said nothing changes when you say it out loud, she continued. Yes. That's not entirely true. Daniel didn't respond, because he could feel that too, now, in the way the air between them had shifted, in the way she was looking at him. Not as someone questioning, not as someone suspicious, as someone seeing something that had been missed. You've been here, she said quietly, and no one knew who they were walking past. Daniel's jaw shifted slightly. He didn't look away. They weren't supposed to, he said. Why not? He paused. Then, because it wasn't theirs to carry, he replied. That landed. Victoria didn't speak right away, because that answer held something she hadn't expected. She looked at the toolbox again, then at him, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. Not softer, just more certain. That doesn't mean it stays buried, she said. Daniel didn't respond. He just stood there, because he didn't know if he agreed, or if he didn't. He just knew it hadn't stayed buried. Not completely, not anymore, and the moment hung there, quiet, not finished, but already moving towards something neither of them had planned when the morning started. The moment didn't break. It didn't need to. It just settled. Victoria looked at him for a long time without speaking, not searching for something new, not questioning what had already been said, just holding it there. Daniel didn't move. The cart stood beside him. One wheel slightly turned, the rag still resting where he left it, dry now, edges stiff. He noticed that again. Small things stayed clear. "You said it wasn't yours to carry," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes, and you still carried it." He didn't answer, because that part didn't need saying twice. Victoria took a slow breath, then let it out. "Do you know how many people have come through this building since then?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "No." "Hundreds," she said. "Maybe more." He didn't respond. "And none of them know that the company almost—" She stopped herself, not finishing the sentence. Not because she couldn't, because she didn't need to. Daniel understood. "It didn't," he said. Victoria looked at him. "That's not the point." He nodded once. "I know." Another pause. Then she stepped closer, closer than before. Not confrontational, just direct. "And the person who stopped it has been walking these halls without anyone knowing," she said. Daniel's jaw shifted slightly. "They didn't need to," he said. "That's not for you to decide." The words came firmer, not sharp, but clear. Daniel didn't argue. He just stood there, because he didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe he did, but it didn't fit here. Victoria studied him again, longer this time, not trying to place him anymore. She already had. "You said my father gave it back," she said, nodding toward the toolbox. Daniel nodded. "Yes, that means he knew what you used it for." "Yes, and he chose to mark it." Daniel's eyes moved briefly to the engraving, then back to her. "Yes." Another silence. Then, "He didn't do things like that lightly," she said. Daniel didn't respond, because he knew that. He had known it even then. "And you still walked away from it," she added. Daniel nodded. "Yes." Victoria's gaze didn't waver. "And you think that's where it ends?" Daniel took a breath. It felt heavier than the others. "I thought it did," he said. She held his gaze. "And now?" He hesitated. "Not long. Just enough." "I don't know," he said. That answer stayed between them. Not incomplete. Just honest. Victoria nodded slightly, as if that was enough for now. She stepped back half a step, not creating distance, just changing the angle again. "And you've been working here," she said, glancing at the cart, "without anyone connecting that." "Yes." "And you didn't want them to." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't think about it," he said. "That's not the same thing." "I know." Another pause. Then she looked at the glass panel behind him, the faint streak still there. She reached out, took the rag from the cart. For a second, Daniel thought she might hand it back, but she didn't. She turned slightly and wiped the streak herself. Slow, careful, not rushed. The motion was simple, but it didn't feel like something she did often. When she finished, she folded the rag once, placed it back on the cart, then looked at him again. "You're good at this," she said. Daniel blinked once, not expecting that. "It's straightforward," he replied. "That's not what I meant." He didn't respond, because he didn't know where she was going with it. She studied him again. "Then, you see things," she said. Daniel's shoulders shifted slightly. "Not outwardly. Just enough." "I notice things," he replied. "That's not the same." He didn't answer, because he understood the difference, and because he didn't want to step into it. Victoria watched him for a moment longer. Then, "Come with me," she said. The words didn't come as a request, but they didn't carry force either. Daniel didn't move. Not immediately. His hand rested on the edge of the toolbox again. Familiar. Grounding. "Where?" he asked. "Downstairs," she said. That word landed differently now. Not just a location. A place he hadn't been back to since that night. Daniel's grip tightened slightly. "Why?" he asked. Victoria didn't look away. "Because this doesn't stay in a hallway," she said. He hesitated. The answer came up in him before he could stop it. I'm not part of that anymore, he said. Victoria nodded once. I know. Then why? Because you never stopped being part of it, she said. That stayed. Not loud. But it didn't move. Daniel didn't respond, because he didn't know how to. Or if he should. Victoria didn't push further. She just stood there, waiting. Not for an answer she expected, just giving him space to reach one. And Daniel, standing there with the past pulled back into the present without warning, felt something shift again. Not the same as before. This one was closer to a decision, and he hadn't made one yet. He didn't move right away. The hallway stayed still around them. No footsteps, no voices, just the quiet hum that never really left this place. Daniel looked at the cart, at the rag she had folded more neatly than he usually did. At the toolbox. His hand rested there, but it didn't feel the same now. Not just something he carried. Something that had been seen. That room isn't the same, he said. Victoria didn't respond immediately. I know, she said after a moment. Daniel nodded. They rebuilt it, he added. Yes. And whatever happened back then, it's gone. Victoria tilted her head slightly. Is it? She asked. Daniel didn't answer, because he didn't know how to separate what had changed from what hadn't. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. I don't work like that anymore, he said. She held his gaze. I'm not asking you to, she replied. Then what are you asking? A pause. Not long. Just enough that the words felt placed, not pushed. To stand where you already stood once, she said. That settled into him differently. Not as pressure, not as expectation. Just a line drawn back to something he hadn't looked at in years. Daniel exhaled slowly. His shoulders shifted. Not from tension. From something loosening. I didn't go back after that night, he said. I know. I didn't want to. I know. Her answers came without hesitation, not dismissing what he said, just holding it alongside what she already understood. He looked at the toolbox again. The engraving. It caught the light the same way it had earlier. Nothing about it had changed, but it didn't feel quiet anymore. Why now? He asked. Victoria didn't look away. Because I didn't know, she said. Daniel nodded once. That's fair. A small pause. Then she added, and now I do. That stayed. Simple, but it carried more than anything else she'd said. Daniel shifted his weight. The floor felt steady again. Not like before. Just enough. And that changes something, she continued. He looked at her. Yes, he said. Not a question, not agreement, just recognition. She nodded, then stepped back slightly. Not leaving, just giving him the space to move if he chose to. Daniel looked down the hallway. It stretched out the same way it always had. Familiar. Predictable. Then he looked in the other direction, toward where the lower levels sat beneath the building. Out of sight. But not gone. His hand moved to the toolbox again. He lifted it this time. Not quickly. The weight felt the same, but it didn't sit the same in his hand. He didn't look at Victoria when he spoke. Just to see it, he said. Her voice came steady. Yes, not more than that. He nodded once, then started walking. She didn't move ahead of him, didn't lead. She walked beside him. The elevator was at the end of the hall. The doors opened without delay. Inside, the space felt smaller than it should have, or maybe just quieter. Neither of them spoke as the doors closed. The numbers lit one by one. Down. Each floor passing without a sound. Daniel watched the reflection in the metal panel. Not clearly, just enough to see the shape of himself, the uniform, the toolbox in his hand. Something about it didn't line up the way it had earlier. The elevator slowed, then stopped. The doors opened. The air felt different down here, cooler. Still, not the same system he remembered, but not entirely unfamiliar either. They stepped out. The hallway was narrower, less polished, functional. Daniel's steps slowed slightly, not stopping, just adjusting. Victoria didn't say anything. She let him take it in. The door to the server room stood ahead. New panel, different lock, no sign of what it used to be. Daniel stopped a few feet from it. Not close enough to touch. Just there. He looked at it for a long moment, then at the floor, then back again. It's smaller, he said. Victoria nodded. They reorganized the layout, she replied. He didn't respond, because that wasn't what he meant, but he didn't need to explain it. The space felt smaller, not physically, in what it held, or didn't. He stepped closer, raised his hand, then stopped, not touching the door. Just there. Victoria watched him, didn't interrupt, didn't guide. She just let him stand there. After a moment, he lowered his hand, took a step back. It's not the same, he said. No, she agreed. Another pause. Then, but you are, she added. Daniel didn't respond, because he didn't know if that was true, or if it mattered. He looked at the toolbox again, then back at the door. Then, without thinking about it too much, he set the toolbox down gently on the floor beside him. The sound was quiet, but it stayed. He straightened, took a breath, and for the first time since they had come down here, he reached for the door. His hand rested on the panel, not pressing, just there. The past didn't come back all at once. It didn't flood in. It stayed where it was. But it wasn't distant anymore, just close enough to feel. He didn't open the door. Not yet. He stood there, hand resting against something that no longer held what it once did, but still carried the shape of it. Victoria stepped up beside him, not in front, not behind, next to him. She looked at the door, then at him, and she didn't say anything, because there wasn't anything left that needed to be said. Daniel took another breath, slower this time, and something in him, something that had been set aside, not lost, shifted back into place, not loudly, not completely, just enough. He removed his hand from the panel, looked down at the toolbox one more time, then back at the door, and when he finally spoke, his voice didn't carry weight the same way it had before. It carried something steadier. I remember where it started, he said. Victoria nodded. She didn't ask him to explain. She didn't need to, because that wasn't the point. The point was, he hadn't forgotten, and he wasn't standing outside it anymore. Not completely, not again,